Yes, and I think you appreciate other people telling stories where India is a little more secretive. We saw more circuses in southern Mexico, around Oaxaca, little small circuses. We saw a couple around Mexico City. But my time, all these trips to Oaxaca and Mexico City, all those years, I would always stay 3 weeks, maybe a month in Oaxaca. Never more than 4 or 5 days in Mexico City. It was that trip between Christmas and New Year's, 2008, 2009. When I said to my director, you know, if this were a novel, I would begin 40 years later. Juan Diego would be 54, not 14, and he would be keeping the promise he made to the gringo in the bathtub in Oaxaca in 1970. And Martin said, that's not a movie, how can we do that? And I said, no, it's not a movie, but that's the novel. That perspective, that telephoto lens that allows you to see how huge his childhood was when we see how reduced, how diminished, how less alive he seems as an older man. You can't appreciate the impact, the trauma of what happens to him as a child, the milagro of the Virgin's tears. You can't appreciate that if you don't meet him later and realize that he's more alive in the past than he ever is in the present.
Yeah.
The monster.
The monster, exactly.
Well, Lupe is very sensitive. Coming from where she does, she's very sensitive to all these churches where other virgins get more attention than Guadalupe. Guadalupe doesn't get a lot of attention in Oaxaca. So I thought that's why Lupe would be.
That's true.
She calls herself a Guadalupe girl, and she feels that Guadalupe is being slighted. But of course, when she sees the basilica in Mexico City, well, she doesn't approve of that either, because that's too big, it's too much attention. It makes her too much like the Virgin Mary. So she takes the mother's ashes and says, okay, we're taking these back to the Virgin Mary. So in the end, the Mary monster even wins Lupe over. In the end, it's very, how do you say, muy católico. It's as many devout Jesuits would tell you, well, they're all the same virgin, really. Well, not to everybody.
Not to everybody. And
Not to everybody. So, this is a miracle novel, Oración por Owen.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot like Avenida de los Misterios. There's the unexplained.
In principle, is the main.
Yeah, well.
In moments.
Also, there's the orphan that Homer is in Beside the House Rules, is very similar to. He's Juan Diego's age when things happen to him. The child in Last Night in Twisted River, he also becomes a writer. He's exactly the age. He's the age Juan Diego is when he kills his father's girlfriend, and by mistake, and he and his father have to run away. So there are often in my novels these tragicomic
with redemption.
Dramatic, traumatic things that happen to children between the ages of 12 and 15. something happens right then, at that age, that makes them. It not only does it change their life, it is responsible for the kind of adult they'll become. It makes them who they will be. Well, I do that all the time. I keep doing that. Lupe has an ancestor. Owen Meany could also see the future. He could also know what you were thinking. He also had problems with his voice. He was also small. So sometimes these things repeat themselves. Flor, the character of Flor, she comes from Roberta Muldoon in El Mundo Según Gar. This simpatico transgender woman. She comes from Miss Frost in Personas Como Yo. That one.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Usually I'm not interested. 35 years ago, George Roy Hill asked me if I wanted to write the guion for El Mundo Según Gar. I knew George, we were friends. I knew the kind of movies he made. The best ones were caper films, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting. I love those movies, but that's not Gar. I knew George saw a different movie in that novel than I saw, so I said, no thanks. Tony Richardson asked me to adapt the Hotel New Hampshire. I knew Tony very well too, but in his case I knew he was just being polite. In his case I knew he wanted to write it himself, but he was just, as a courtesy, saying, oh, would you like to write it? And I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, yes, because he wanted to write it. So usually I say no. But in the case of The Cider House Rules, I always wanted to do it. In the case of Avenida, I think I've already written that screenplay, and we will make it. You know, we're going to make it.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
And now I am writing El Mundo Según Gar as a TV series for HBO.
Oh, great!
Maybe.
Let's keep it
As you say here, vamos a ver. We'll see if it really happens.
Yeah, well, we believe in miracles. We just let it go and hope for the best.
I don't think the Virgin Mary is going to help me with this one.